Alright, fellas, the fight is officially off. Gervonta Davis has made what can only be described as a generational fumble, losing the biggest payday of his career at the last moment. It's been announced that Jake Paul will move on from this matchup and is now planning a new fight for December, though the details surrounding his replacement opponent remain vague. What we do know is that the November date is cancelled, and Gervonta Davis is officially out of the picture. With this breaking news, it's time to unpack what just happened and what it means for the futures of both Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. For anyone who's been following the story over the past week, this announcement isn't exactly a shock. It's been one of the worst-kept secrets in boxing lately. Still, now that it's official, both fighters find themselves in a complicated position moving forward. For some context, if you've been living under a rock, Tank Davis and Jake Paul were originally set to face off next weekend. However, everything was thrown into uncertainty when a civil lawsuit was filed by Davis's ex-girlfriend. The suit included serious accusations of aggravated battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. While no official criminal charges had been filed at the time of this recording, the situation was still terrible news for the promotion. With Netflix involved in the event, there was even less room for leniency. They weren't going to take any chances on something that could damage their brand. Once these allegations hit the media, the collapse of the event felt almost inevitable. Over the past few days, MVP, the promotional company behind the fight, appears to have been weighing whether to take a gamble on Tank or move on and find a replacement. In the end, they clearly decided that the potential PR disaster wasn't worth the risk. MVP has been leading the charge in women's boxing recently, signing some of the biggest stars and hosting the sport's most high-profile events. Because of that, having a fighter facing allegations of kidnapping and aggravated battery against his ex-girlfriend headlining their flagship card was never going to be a good look. Now that they've pulled the plug, Jake Paul's camp faces a tough challenge, finding a replacement for Tank Davis on such short notice. The reason they chose Tank in the first place was clear: he's one of the biggest draws in boxing. They couldn't secure names like Canelo or Anthony Joshua, so going after Tank made perfect sense. For Paul, it was also a more appealing matchup, given that he might actually have a fighting chance against Tank compared to those other elite opponents. From Netflix's perspective, the fight needed to be massive to justify featuring it on their platform, which is exactly why a potential matchup with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. never materialized. It simply wasn't big enough to make the cut. As Jake Paul's team moves forward with plans for his next fight on Netflix, their main challenge is finding an opponent with comparable star power to match the hype. Whether they can pull that off on such short notice is another question entirely. The event has already been pushed back to December to buy them more time, but realistically, there are only a few names that could generate the same level of public interest as Tank Davis or Tyson. Ryan Garcia would have been a logical choice, but he appears to be gearing up for a bout with Mario Barrios, taking him out of contention. With Garcia off the table, Paul's camp is exploring creative options, even reaching out to unlikely names like Francis Ngannou. That matchup probably won't happen, but it shows they're making an effort. Several boxers, including Richardson Hitchens and Carl Froch, have also thrown their names into the mix in hopes of securing a big payday, though none seem to have the star power to truly entice Jake. One rumor that has started gaining real traction, however, is a potential fight with Andre Ward. Over the past 6 months, Ward has been teasing a comeback and even calling out Anthony Joshua, a far-fetched idea, but one that's kept his name relevant. Now, it's being reported that MVP has formally approached Ward about stepping into the ring with Paul. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if he ends up being the replacement opponent. For those unfamiliar, Andre Ward is a Hall of Famer with a spotless 32-0 record and undefeated legend who would bring serious credibility to the event. Andre Ward hasn't fought since June 2017, over 8 years ago, which is wild and definitely makes me feel a bit old. On top of that, he's about to turn 42, so in boxing terms, he's definitely past his prime. His professional debut was more than 2 decades ago, yet if Jake Paul were to face him, Ward would be by far the toughest opponent Jake has ever stepped into the ring with. From a promotional standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Ward is a big enough name to market Jake as taking on an undefeated boxing legend, and it likely wouldn't be too costly to bring him back for a fight. That said, a victory for Jake would be extremely unlikely. Even just going the rounds with Ward would be a moral win, which he could leverage as momentum for his next bout. With Ward coming off nearly a decade-long layoff, there's a chance Jake could last all the rounds, but either way, his team is actively searching for a replacement opponent as we speak, and when that news drops, I'll be sure to cover it. As for Gervonta Davis, his immediate future is less clear. First, his team will likely wait to see how the civil case develops, which could occupy his schedule for the foreseeable future. They'll want to find out if any criminal charges are filed, and if nothing materializes, They'll probably wait a while to let the negative press die down before making any moves in the ring. With the Pitbull vs Roach fight coming up in about a month, it would make sense for Gervonta Davis to wait and potentially take on the winner. That's exactly the kind of rebound fight he needs, something respectable, without going straight for the absolute elite of the division. A rematch against Pitbull or Roach would make sense, though historically, Davis hasn't been keen on rematches. If he's smart, taking the winner would be the way to go. At this point, I don't expect much else from Tank. He risks losing even more respect if he digs up another fighter from the 130-pound division or takes someone from the lower tiers of lightweight, a precedent he's unfortunately set. There's also the possibility that Tank might just retire. Many see it as an option, especially since his focus hasn't seemed fully on the sport lately. Some even viewed this cancelled fight as a potential exit strategy. But with this huge payday now gone, it might push him to stick around a little longer. I don't think this is the last we'll see of him, though stranger things have happened. Overall, this situation is a complete disaster. Tank has let a generational payday slip through his fingers. The alleged incidents in the civil suit reportedly occurred in September, which raises questions. If he were smart, he could have insulated himself from distractions for a few months, locked in at the gym, and secured the fight. But, true to form, drama seems to follow him throughout his career. Now, the event that could have been the biggest of his career has been cancelled. As always, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the cancellation, and what do you see next for both Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love reading every single one, hearing your theories and opinions. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. Thanks for watching, fellas, and I'll catch you in the next one.